Good afternoon, everybody. This is another edition of the Passed Ball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey. Lots of stuff we're going to get into. Glad to be with you as we start the month of August. You obviously have the trading deadline, which just passed on July 31st. A lot of interesting things happen, and give some credit to a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates and their fans. If you think about what happened at the beginning of the year, you could think of a lot of distrust and unhappiness amongst the fan base of the Pittsburgh Pirates, with the team trading Garrett Cole and trading Andrew McCutchen, and eventually setting themselves up for a year or a couple of years of rebuilding. Well, the Pirates have done a very good job in staying above 500, certainly being in the race. If we're going to talk about the National League Central, I don't know if they got enough ground to be able to make up to the Chicago Cubs, but what I do believe is that this is a team that really does have a chance. The Milwaukee Brewers had a very good opportunity to get themselves a starting pitcher, something that I thought was an issue for them at the beginning of this season, as we open the show with the cuckoo clock today. But, you know, thinking about the Brewers and how they kind of, listen, they went out there, they got themselves Jonathan Scope, they got themselves Mike Moustakas. They put themselves in a tremendous position to have one of the better offenses in the National League. Of course, the Dodgers are there. Of course, themselves adding Brian Dozier from the Minnesota Twins in an ironic trade, which involves Logan Forsythe. Logan Forsythe was the second baseman that the Los Angeles Dodgers traded for a couple of years ago, giving up one of their top pitching prospects in Jose De Leon. Now they dangled De Leon over the Minnesota Twins, hoping that that would be enough to get themselves Dozier. It didn't work out. Now Forsythe is part of the package going into Minnesota. But if we're talking about the better offenses in the National League, I like the Brewers. I'm a little worried about them defensively, whether it's Jonathan Scope playing short, whether it's Travis Shaw playing second base, or even shortstop himself. Those are things that have to be concerns if you're looking to be a complete team come October. And if you look at the Milwaukee Brewers pitching staff, they're a team that needed an ace. They needed a proverbial number one, or at the very least a solid 2 or 3. They're going to be in trouble. And the Pittsburgh Pirates have an opportunity getting themselves Chris Archer. They could certainly make up ground and may have a chance to overtake the Brewers for that last wild card spot. So, you know, lots of stuff we could talk about in regards to the trading deadline. Anything that's on your mind, if you want, just feel free to comment on the Facebook or Periscope feed. Anything that you're thinking about in the world of baseball and sports. A couple things we're going to hit up on today, and a couple of them are going to be a little bit controversial. You know, you got the situation going on with Urban Meyer with Ohio State. Whether he knew about the abuse that was going on with his wide receivers coach. Was he a person that could have been in a position to say something? I'm going to give it a point of view on it. It may not necessarily be agreed with by the general public, but I have to get that out. Another thing we're going to touch on, LeBron James with the I Promise school, pretty much putting his money where his mouth is. We can talk about that, how that stands in regards to athletes speaking, actors speaking, musicians speaking, people that are in a certain profession that isn't related to politics and way of life and lifestyle and stuff like that. And their ability, which obviously we have freedom of speech, anybody can say whatever they want, but should their voices be heard? Should they be taken seriously when they speak? Or what about this movement that exists in regards to stick to sports, stick to acting, stick to whatever it is that you're a part of? Because the same could apply to you. We'll touch on that in a little bit. First thing I got to talk about today, and I was watching the New York Mets game yesterday, and trust me, this is not a breaking down of the team, and I'm not going to really talk a whole lot of Mets baseball on today's show. Obviously, it gained, semi-national news by losing 25-4. And what was more impressive yesterday when they lost to the Nationals was the fact that the Nationals scored 3 or more runs in the first 4 innings of the game, or the first 5 innings of the game. Something that was ridiculous, something that you've never seen before in baseball history. And as a historian myself who appreciates the game and how long it's gone on, 150 years, so many different things that happen, I'm rooting for something that I've never seen before when it comes to baseball history. Now, it didn't happen. Mets ended up losing 25-4, but what ends up standing out in that game is not the struggles of the Mets or how bad of a baseball team they are. In fact, an embarrassment, which their manager ended up saying those exact words in a press conference after yesterday. It's something that happened in the 9th inning, in a game that at one point was 25-1 in favor of the Washington Nationals. Obviously, this game was decided, and at some point you have to put somebody in there to finish the game. Now, I'm going to tell you this. Sean Kelly being DFA'd today is wrong on so many different fronts. And I'm going to touch on a couple of those reasons. First of all, it looks like it might have been a misunderstanding. Now, Sean Kelly barking at the umpires in a 25-1 game in the 9th inning, that's his problem. He's got the issue there. What the hell are you giving a damn about an umpire's call in the 9th inning of a game that you're up by 24 runs? Were you upset about the umpire trying to speed up the game? The umpire wants the game to end. This game was decided in the first inning. The Nationals are piling run upon run upon run, batting around the order with Jose Reyes on the mound in the 9th inning. First of all, the first person or the first group of people that were not wrong in this situation were absolutely 100% right were the umpires. The umpires want this game to end, for crying out loud. That's what they're looking for. It's 25-1 going in the 9th inning. Sean Kelly's probably going to get a couple favorable calls. Now, was Sean Kelly quit pitching or not coming to a set or not giving the batter the opportunity to be ready? It looked like it. The umpire was just doing his job. So Sean Kelly getting pissed off about that when his team's up by 24 runs, that's the sin right here. Now, he gives up a home run to Austin Jackson, and as Jackson's going around the bases, slams his glove on the ground in frustration and takes a look into the Washington Nationals dugout. Now, that looks bad. I get it. But in the end, when you see what happens and you see the fact that this pitcher, by the way, is putting up pretty good numbers, he's having a pretty good season for a reliever. We're talking about relievers that are so fickle from year to year that you kind of have to ride the hot hand when they're performing. When they're throwing the ball well, you want to stick with them. The Nationals make the decision today to DFA him. And for those listeners who are not baseball fans, DFA is an acronym for designated for assignment, which essentially means that the player is fired. And this applies to my non-sports fans right now. People that don't love baseball, don't follow the game day in and day out. Now you can say, well, he's not really fired. And here's the caveat. The caveat is the player gets to keep the money on whatever their negotiated contract was through the collective bargaining agreement. So Sean Kelly's making $5 million, $4 million, whatever. He's going to get paid for that for the rest of the season. But the team that he is playing for has agreed to sever ties with him, has agreed to move on, has agreed to forget about the relationship between the player and the team. Now, Sean Kelly loses his job. Now, you could say it was for throwing a glove. You could say it was for the stare into the Washington Nationals dugout. And all that screams to me is disconnect with the Washington Nationals, who are a couple of games over 500, really close to falling out of the race in the National League East. And the NL wildcard spot, kind of getting a little bit away from that. And if I'm the Washington Nationals, I'm thinking about how are we going to right this ship? How are we going to put our best foot forward in the months of August and September? Those would be my biggest concerns right now. Not overreacting to a pitcher throwing his glove down. Now, it was wrong. Absolutely. There's no reason for Sean Kelly to have done that. But to basically kick him off the team and insinuate that he was blaming the manager for putting him into the game, which from all records that what I'm seeing is not true. So if that's not true, maybe there is some extra dirt. Maybe there's some other things that are involved in this situation that we don't know about. Maybe Sean Kelly is really not that nice of a guy. Maybe he's not that good of a teammate. But I think it's amazing to say after one day, one action, after one home run, you'd go from having this guy as an anchor to your bullpen, a potential 7th or 8th inning guy, to wanting him kicked off the team. And it happened really quick. So maybe there's some extra things going on that we don't know. Details may emerge. But the Nationals look pretty stupid here. Here's a team that's 2 games over 500 when they're expected to win the National League East. They're set up in 2018 with the potential that it could be the last of their opportunity to make a run in the postseason. Bryce Harper's a free agent at the end of the season. Daniel Murphy's a free agent at the end of the season. Gio Gonzalez, amongst others, are free agents at the end of the season. So odds are, unless the Washington Nationals throw the money up and decide to pay all their players, the team's going to look a lot different next year. And for a team that's won a considerable amount of division titles and hasn't gotten past the first round, I'm sure the consensus, conventional wisdom would probably say that this is the year the Washington Nationals were expected to make a run. They're sitting there 2 games over 500. They just went through the trading deadline. They traded Brandon Kinsler, one of their better relievers. And all they care about on August 1st is whether Sean Kelly's actions, quote-unquote, disrespected their team. You want to talk about disrespect for 1 second? Do you remember what happened 3 years ago in September while the Mets were running away with the division and the Washington Nationals were about to miss the postseason? There's turmoil in the clubhouse. The team's falling apart. The manager's not paying attention. And Jonathan Papelbon is choking Bryce Harper out in the middle of the dugout in full view of anybody that can see. Everybody in the stadium, everybody on television, becomes a national story. No pun intended. And the Nationals decide to not make a big deal about it. They send Jonathan Papelbon home. Sean Kelly in this situation is treated as if he had done worse than what Jonathan Papelbon did to Bryce Harper. And I think that's silly because I don't see any truth to it. So you got a team in Washington that, picked up a couple games by beating the lowly New York Mets. Still is a long way to go to get to where they were expected to get to this year. And they got a pitcher with a sub-1 whip, with a 3-something ERA, is getting guys out, is probably a good candidate to be the 7th or 8th inning reliever for this team. And you're kicking him to the curb. Why don't you focus on trying to win some baseball games? It's an embarrassing season for the Washington Nationals. And they just embarrassed themselves again. Next thing I want to get into. You hear the report today about Urban Meyer, the Ohio State coach, potentially knowing about the domestic violence accusations against one of his assistants in 2015. Obviously, it's a serious matter. Nobody that's going to discuss something like that is not going to identify that it is a serious matter. That being said, the general public jumps in, and all you see is vultures. Vultures exist everywhere. You know what vultures want to do? They want to sit on their couch in their lowly life doing whatever it is that they're doing, probably not very much, and they want to sit here and wait for somebody in the public eye to be connected to a major story. And once that happens, the vultures, man, do they want to see this guy fail. Now, I don't know the details in this. Now I go back to the story about Penn State and Jerry Sandusky. And Joe Paterno ended up losing his job. Now, I understood because of the magnitude of what happened there, the amount of children that were involved in that situation, and it may have been in the best interest for the school and Joe Paterno to part ways. But am I looking at Joe Paterno like he molested 20 or something boys? No. Similarly, if you're looking at Urban Meyer like he's the one that beat up his assistant coach's wife, that's what his assistant coach did. And I understand. Sometimes if there is a cover-up and if their evidence could push or could prove that there was a cover-up in this particular situation, we're looking at something different. We're looking at something different than what I'm talking about right now. But the issue that I have is you got the general public, the media, they can't wait to jump in on this story. They can't wait to weigh in. But not only that, they can't wait to see this guy rot. They can't wait to see Urban Meyer lose his job. There's about 20 to 50 to 100 stories that are being written up right now about Urban Meyer being fired at Ohio State. That could happen. Ohio State, as an employer, as a university, obviously as a business, should do their own due diligence. They should do a proper investigation. I believe they've placed the guy on leave. So Urban Meyer's on administrative leave right now while the situation's being resolved. I'm okay with that. The problem I have is you are essentially going from a point to letting a man have his say to going way past the right to a lawyer, the right to trial, the right to a verdict, even the right to an appeal, and going right to the execution. And that's what people want to see. And I hate to say it, and I've mentioned it a bunch of times in the society that we live in right now. People like to see the destruction of others. People want to see people in the spotlight have their fall from grace. Look at how many people are jumping on the bandwagon to knock down Morgan Freeman. Pretty similar to any other person in the spotlight that is named in a story. I never understood this. If you can tell me I'm wrong, that's fine. Let me know. I think it's amazing. Every single time you have a sexual harassment allegation against a celebrity, there's always this group of multiple women coming out of the woodwork. And I'll tell you this, I hope and I pray that every single woman that was involved, that throws their name out there and says, me too, it happened to me, is telling the absolute 100% truth. And if that's the case, it is what it is. And the person should be held accountable for their actions. My fear is that you have women out there trying to pick up money, trying to get themselves in the spotlight. You may live in a small town. You may not have a lot of friends. People don't know who you are. And my fear, and it is a deep fear that I have, and I hope that I'm wrong. I would like to be wrong in this instance. That there's women that are looking to make a name for themselves and profit off of the actions of other people. And that bothers me. But back to my main point in regards to Urban Meyer. You need to see more details. You need to figure out exactly what his knowledge was of this situation. And if he knew enough about it and decided in his own mind that he was not going to tell the information or pass the information on that he had to his superiors, then he very well can lose his job. But once again, the court of public opinion, the media, the fans, the vultures want him out before any facts are presented. And I tell you, it bothers me. It bothers me to see it because you've seen so many people end up losing their jobs, end up losing their livelihoods And think about it if it happened to the average person on the average with the average job. Now, if they are arrested and prosecuted and have to serve time in jail, that's a major deal. That's going to impact anybody in their jobs. But do you see the average person that isn't in the spotlight, that doesn't have a name for themselves, that millions and millions of people don't know who they are? Do they lose their average and ordinary job when they decide to beat their wives? Because the last time I checked, it's not just celebrities that are involved in domestic violence. In fact, it's people that are well known, but also people that will never be known. People that might be known by some friends, people that live in close circles, people that may be known by hundreds as opposed to hundreds of thousands. In a lot of cases, those people that are involved in domestic violence situations end up keeping their job. Their job might not be paying very well. May be able to raise a family, but certainly isn't, in $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million a year job that most people in the public eye, that everybody knows their name, are in. But my issue with this is you have to figure out what actually happened. And once again, because Urban Meyer is the well-known person here, because people know who Urban Meyer is, because he is a successful college football coach for many years, people want to see him go down more than the man that actually committed the crime in the first place. The wide receivers coach that was allegedly beating the heck out of his wife. Is on a different level. Is almost a backstory to the main story, which is now Urban Meyer. So when I mention vultures, vultures are the people that gravitate towards the big name. They may gravitate towards that big name in public, wanting to get close to him, wanting to get a picture with him, wanting to get an autograph. But when they hear the big name, the rest of the story doesn't mean anything. The rest of the incident that happened that involved his wide receivers coach and domestic violence is not the issue anymore. All of a sudden, it's about Urban Meyer. Just like Jerry Sandusky molested a bunch of boys for 20 plus years. And people looked at Joe Paterno as if he was the bigger criminal. And if that's your way of thinking, I just got to tell you, it's flawed. I got serious issues with that line of thinking. So you're looking at a person that may have been negligent. I believe Joe Paterno was negligent. If facts prove that Urban Meyer was negligent, him losing his job as the head coach of Ohio State would be a logical penalty. But once again, if you go to any of your sports talk shows, the main story is going to be what? Urban Meyer. Not this clown assistant coach by the name of Zach Smith, who in 2015 and was fired 3 years ago. His now ex-wife put an order of protection against him. The claim in a report was that this woman was in danger, needed to be protected. Unfortunately, stuff like this is not what's going to be talked about. Zach Smith is pretty much a jerk for what he did. He probably deserves to go to jail. That should be the main story. It should be about Zach Smith allegedly beating his wife. Instead, who's got the bigger name? Urban Meyer's got the big name. So the story is going to be about Urban Meyer. And you know what? Once again, the media and the court of public opinion are going to get it wrong. Just like they got it wrong with Joe Paterno. Joe Paterno was negligent. He paid the consequences by losing his job. But he certainly was nowhere near as criminal as Jerry Sandusky was. So when you want to indict Urban Meyer before he even has a chance to represent himself, before we find out even if the allegations are true, the court of public opinion and the Vultures are looking to ruin this guy's life and make it as if he went over to Zach Smith's house and beat Zach Smith's wife. The same way people made Joe Paterno out to be the one that molested the children that Jerry Sandusky molested. That's my issue. Once again, John Pielli, Passed Ball Show. Glad to be with you. Obviously getting into some stuff that's not too pleasant. Not stuff that we really want to be glorifying. But I do want to transition into something great. Something special. Something that backs up everything that this man has said. Now, months ago, within the last year, LeBron James stood up as one of many celebrities that spoke up against the president, made his views on politics very public, and at the time was viewed as just another voice, just another athlete. Shut up and dribble was said to him. Stick to sports was said to LeBron James. Yet, you got celebrities that go on these ridiculous rants when they're in a public forum, whether it's the Oscars or anywhere where they got a TV camera on them, dropping F-bombs left and right, basically making themselves look silly, even if they're making valid points. Even if what they're talking about is 100% legit, they made an ass out of themselves. In fact, they had their moment where they essentially turned into a zombie. Remember the Night of the Living Dead? When you get bit by the zombie and all of a sudden you just flip out and become a zombie? That's what most people in the public eye, we're talking about actors, musicians, athletes, end up doing when they go on these ridiculous rants, throwing nothing but profanity out there and not really backing their hatred and their anger with any legitimate thought. LeBron James spoke about things that were from his heart. He didn't need to use profanity. He didn't need to quote-unquote flip out. He wasn't bitten by the zombie where he couldn't help but just scream and yell profanity. LeBron James backed up his words. Started the I Promise School in Akron, Ohio. It focuses on accelerated learning, gives job placement assistance for parents, has an on-site food bank, supports students with stress from economic causes. Each student gets a free bike to escape dangerous parts and neighborhoods, and also guarantees free tuition to the University of Akron to all graduates starting in 2021. LeBron James has spoken about issues that go on in the inner city and opportunities that don't exist for many in the inner city. Many, actually few I would say, as opposed to many, are fortunate enough to get into athletics, to involve themselves in something, but even the smartest of the smart are not put in positions where they could do that extracurricular work that's needed to get advantages when it comes to getting college scholarships, getting into colleges. And in many cases, being in the inner cities is a burden. It's a burden for somebody that wants to grow up and do something. And honestly, I've been waiting for years for somebody to step up and want to do something like this. And I look at it like this. You know, if somebody had done half of what LeBron James did, opening up this school, offering jobs for the kids' parents, giving the kids bikes, making it completely free, putting a food bank on site, allowing these kids to go to college for free once they graduate. If somebody did half of what LeBron James would do, or is doing, and has done, that would be tremendous. But most players and athletes and actors and entertainers are more concerned with the sound of their own voice. They're more concerned with the fact that their name is put out there in regards to speaking out. I hate to say it, and I love the National Football League, but I'd like to see more NFL players do more in regards to police brutality. The kneeling for the national anthem is getting to a point where you could say, hey, they're protesting. Okay, they're protesting. Maybe they're protesting police brutality. Maybe they're protesting the President of the United States, which they have every right to do if that's how they feel and that's what they want to do. But where's the action behind it? Because I mentioned this on the show I did last week. I asked, what is the protest about? Is the protest about police brutality anymore? Or is it against the national anthem itself? Where is the action done to say, all right, police brutality does exist. Let's make sure that it doesn't happen, or let's get to the root of what the problem is. Let's figure out why there are these isolated incidents that happen throughout the country involving police officers. But now, it's just about kneeling for the national anthem. And I'll tell you this, anybody that kneels for the national anthem, it's getting to a point where it's not even constructive anymore. All you're going to do, yeah, sure, a camera may pick you up and say, hey, that player knelt. But my question is, what does it even mean anymore? If it was started and initiated as a protest to police brutality, how come police brutality hasn't been brought up in months? And once again, I blame the media, the general public, the court of public opinion, which has gone out there and made it more about the protesting of the national anthem than the initial issue that was brought up by Colin Kaepernick when he decided to kneel. We can agree that there is police brutality. Not everywhere. I stand here as I look at you, know that there are way more good police officers than bad police officers. Unfortunately, bad apples have turned this into an issue. But my question to you is, has it swung too much towards the national anthem as opposed to the initial issue that was brought up in regards to police brutality? Because it's almost a side story. It's police brutality is the side story. The main story is national anthem protesting. The NFL's decision on the national anthem protesting. Teams reacting to the NFL's decision on national anthem protesting. And the more of this that gets brought up, the further and further away we're getting from what was initially the root issue, which led the first player to kneel for the national anthem. And that was police brutality. It hasn't been brought up. It's been brought up less and less. Last thing I want to touch up on today. This is the Passed Ball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey. Spoke a little bit earlier about LeBron James. Outstanding job. He did what I think many other athletes and people in the spotlight may have liked to do, either decided not to, or maybe decided that they couldn't afford it. He put his money where his mouth is. He backed up every statement that he made himself into the person that can have a huge impact on an entire youth, on an entire generation. And that has nothing to do with anything he's done on the basketball court. And that needs to be applauded. So we have people that continue to lambaste and bash celebrities. And when I say celebrities, it could be actors, it could be entertainers, it could be athletes that speak up about political issues, about stuff that's not related to whatever their profession is. And my message to you is, whatever it is that you do for a living, are you willing to give up your opinion about politics? Are you willing to give up your quote-unquote free speech to just stick to whatever job it is that you have? Whether you're a banker or a teacher or a firefighter or work in a retail store? You want to stick to your job and give up your right to your opinion? That's my message to anybody that says stick to sports, stick to acting, stick to whatever it is that you do. Because all of a sudden you're speaking about entitlement that you're giving yourself. You've all of a sudden made yourself high and mighty. You've made yourself superior. And once again, that's one of the common themes of what I've been talking about today. People might have a name to themselves, but you're free to say and do whatever it is that you want to do. You want to call out Urban Meyer and make him as if he was way worse than his wide receivers coach that was beating his wife. You want to make Joe Paterno out to be a worse person than Jerry Sandusky because you're a vulture. And the same vulture instinct that you have is the same one that's calling many people out to tell athletes to stick to sports, to tell entertainers to stick to entertainment, to tell musicians to stick to music. Why don't you stick to your own job and give up the right that you claim to have in regards to freedom of speech? We'll be back with you tomorrow. This is the Passed Ball Show. Glad to be with you as always. If you missed anything in regards to what I talked about today, we talked about the Washington Nationals, the hypocrisy that exists there, a team that seemed to condone Jonathan Papelbon choking Bryce Harper in the dugout, had no question or no hesitation in designating Sean Kelly for assignment. The Vultures going after Urban Meyer. He's becoming a bigger story now. It's not about Zach Smith. Zach Smith, the man that beat his wife, is no longer the story. It's more about Urban Meyer, because Urban Meyer has a name to it. And the Vultures are obsessed with names. LeBron's heroic efforts in starting the I Promise School, and as one person that proved that as an athlete, he can make a difference about something that has nothing to do with athletics. Last thing I want to ask you, do you want to give up your speech and stick to your job? We'll be back with you tomorrow. God bless you, and as always, I'll see you on the other side.